Morning, Anya. Morning, John.
Morning.
Okay, we got Craig, Dino. There's Mike Zeller. Morning, Mike.
Morning.
So we've got 2 members, voting members so far. We need 1 more.
Yeah, we got a couple of minutes. Hans is going to drop in here any minute.
Okay. Jonathan Brinkman from LAFCO.
You do.
There's Hans.
Yep.
Okay. There's Doug Yount hanging out on the Big Sur coast.
Very nice.
It's Oregon, actually. It's the Oregon coast behind our house
Okay.
today,
Okay.
last summer.
The good life. Okay, I think we have a quorum, huh?
Okay. Should we kick it off?
Yes.
All right. Well, good morning, all. It's great to see your smiling faces virtually this fine Wednesday morning. Let's call to order the meeting of the Administrative Committee. I'll ask Harry to do a roll call vote to establish a quorum, and then we'll proceed.
Mike Malin,
I'm here.
Dino Pick,
Here.
Lane Long, Hans Uslar,
Present.
Melanie Beretti,
He's here.
Steve Matarazzo,
He's here.
Here.
Nicole Hollingsworth,
I'm here, but I think Anya is the one on this committee.
okay,
And I'm here.
Katie Moon, Mike Seller,
I'm here.
Bill Collins, Matt Deal, Erica Parker, Colleen Courtney, Vicky Nakamura,
Here.
Patrick Breen, we have a quorum.
Okay, thank you very much. So as most of you are very familiar with by now, Zoom protocol, if you can, keep your mic muted while you're listening. And when you wish to speak, go to the participants tab and click on raise hand in the lower right corner, and we'll recognize you for your comments. Any questions on process, procedure? Seeing a couple of hands practicing there. Hopefully that's practice and not unless Zoe needs.
That is me. So I am here, Lane.
All right, Lane. I like Zoe clogging. I think I'm going to call you that now.
Yeah, I think
I'll rename you, Lane, so we know who you are.
I did that for Craig. I knew that he would appreciate that.
Oh, you want to keep that name, or you want it to say who you are?
I can change that here.
Okay, great.
All right, welcome, Lane.
Thank you.
Okay, moving to acknowledgments, announcements, and correspondence. Any acknowledgments, announcements, and correspondence? Hearing none, we'll move to public comment. Any member of the public wishing to comment on items not on the agenda?
Seeing a hand raised, Jonathan Brinkman.
Thank you, Jonathan. Go ahead. Is that just practice, Jonathan?
Can you hear
Oh.
me? Can you hear me, guys?
Yes.
Okay. So just from LAFCO, I just wanted to bring up an item that's not on the agenda. An item we've discussed with FORA in the past months has been transfer of FORA's CEQA lead agency responsibilities to jurisdictions for ongoing FORA CEQA projects. And on this issue, LAFCO received a letter yesterday from the California Native Plant Society. Their attorney representing them is Molly Erickson. So we received a letter, and its subject was about, its stated subject was failure by FORA to name a successor agency to FORA for 1, contracts with the California Native Plant Society, and 2, a CEQA lead agency for road projects that would cause harm to Rare Plant Reserve 1 North. So I just wanted to bring that to this body's attention, that we'll be sharing that correspondence with you, but that issue is being discussed and corresponded about by the California Native Plant Society and their attorney.
Thank you very much.
Well, it looks like John Giffin's trying to speak there.
Hey,
Sorry.
Jonathan. Good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Jonathan, can you please send me a copy of that letter?
Yes.
We haven't heard formally from Molly that she has any problems, but I'd like to hear what she has to say.
Okay.
Thank you.
And while you're at it, Jonathan, if you wouldn't mind sending that to Del Reyes as well, I'd appreciate it.
Sure.
Great. Okay, terrific. Any other public comment? Okay. Seeing no hands, we will close public comment period, move to approval of meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve the March 11th special meeting minutes?
Motion to approve.
Craig moves. Is there a second? I will second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Do we need to do roll call vote on minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. Mary, go ahead.
Craig Malin,
Yes. Aye.
Dino Pick,
Aye.
Lane Long,
I
Hans Uslar,
Hans, you're muted.
His internet went out. He's going to try to join when he can again.
Okay. Melanie Beretti,
Aye.
motion passes.
All right. Thank you very much. April 9th board meeting follow-up. Josh?
Yeah, so we had a robust discussion on some weighty matters last week. The first, of course, being the approval of the mid-year general and CIP budgets. So that went smoothly, actually unanimous approval. Then we got into discussion on two items, 8B and C, and they were taken out of order, of course, and then discussed together. And in the end, the board went with two alternatives that were considered here. They're up on, actually, we put the presentation up on the website. I'm trying to find it here for everyone's, well, for my help. Let's see. Yeah, so there were, they landed on the Habitat Fund distribution with alternative 1 that was presented by ICF and dealt with action of CF funds on habitat acreage basis. And on the bond proceeds, the vote went with scenario 1, which was to stick with the December 13th, 2019 bond allocations. So those were both non-unanimous votes, and they're coming back for a second vote on Friday. So that was the bulk of the meeting, and now we're just gearing up for the second vote items, and we'll have two other kind of sub items for the board to talk about on Friday that are related to the habitat issue and just the mechanics of getting the funding done and notifying the wildlife agencies.
Terrific.
So yep. So that's the report. I see a couple hands raised.
Okay. Let's go with Lane. Go ahead.
You're muted, Lane.
Melanie is probably going to raise the same issue. The county and I are working on some language, and so we may have a proposed modification to that language on Friday.
Okay.
Melanie may have something to say on that.
I think what it comes down to, if I may, Lane, just add to that. So, and in this case, so the county and the city of Marina have been in negotiations for landfill border parcels. And so I think it comes down to the general consideration for any parcels that may transfer prior to June 30th, that, you know, the respective, you know, calculation of funds that would transfer, whether or not that could go directly to a jurisdiction. Should land ownership change between now and June 30th. That's really what the crux is. So either that can, so we're working on either, and I think I wanted to know kind of mechanically what would that look like on Friday for a second vote if some sort of language such as that were to be added. Is that doable, or is the second vote frozen with what the original vote was?
Yeah, it's a second vote on the original motion, and I would say that things like that, what you're talking about, would be appropriate to include in bond documentation that's coming up, or could be terms of an agreement that you know, county and Marina deal with directly, an MOU, if you will. I think those would be ways to handle that. And then yeah, and then just to note that the other, I forgot, I left off of my summary that there was another item on the agenda, which was the 2020 transition plan, which was tabled for this Friday.
Okay. Any other comment? Terrific. All right. Thanks, Josh, for the follow-up. Moving to item 6A, draft transition plan implementation agreement review and recommendations. Josh, you want to frame that?
Yeah, Kendall's gonna discuss this item. You know, this is the long-running question of the transition plan implementation agreements, and particularly the focus on the water item that was tabled back from March 11th. So I'll let Kendall kind of lead the conversation on this. I will make a note if I might, just before we jump into this, that in regards to the bond question that was discussed just a minute ago, the bond counsel, who had a pretty significant conversation with the team last Friday, they're still working on documents and in communication with all the relevant attorneys at each of the agencies. And so they're where we're hoping we might have that item ready, the document for this Friday. They're asking for a later date, and so we are scheduling another special meeting on April 30th to take up the bond documents. So we can talk more about that later if it needs any discussion, but I just thought it was relevant to the prior conversation. And then I would hand it to Kendall to talk about the TPIA and the tabled motion from March 11th.
Thanks, Josh. I'm going to start with the TPIA, and then we'll go into the 2020 plan. But I've asked Harry to pull up the minutes from the March meeting. Just as a reminder to everyone, we went through the TPIAs beginning in, actually further back, but in earnest in December, and then again in January. And at those times, you guys made suggestions, and we, of course, made edits. In the February meeting, we had taken out several sections. We had removed a number of things, but the discussion was we wanted to bring back the water and habitat in March. And of course, COVID reared its ugly head. At our last meeting in March, and Harry, if you can put that up, that'd be great. The discussion really related to water and whether or not the TPIAs were going to be reflecting the proposed exhibit that had the allocations, whether we were going to leave that to MCWD or how that was going to work. And at that time, Hans made a motion, and if you can make that a little bit bigger, Harry, so everybody can see that. And the admin committee decided to table that motion for the vote at the next meeting, which is today. And so basically, this is how it was listed. We thought we had consensus for this at that time, but everyone had asked for a little time to think about it and take it back to their respective agencies and make a recommendation. So what we really want to do today is review this motion made by Member Uslar in March and take a vote on that today if possible, or get additional input. I know I know CSUMB has released a letter this morning that everyone was provided, I think yesterday, that had some other language for consideration. I'll leave that to you to determine if you want to continue with Member Uslar's motion or if you want to do something else. The other item that was going to be considered by this group was related to habitat. However, the board has already taken action on that, which they will memorialize on Friday one way or the other. And based on what you tell us today, we'll be re-releasing a clean version of the TPIA for all agencies, probably Monday or Tuesday of next week, that would incorporate the board's direction on habitat and this body's direction on the water and whether or not what language you would like to see in there. And then those will be available for all of the attorneys to review and get back to us if there's any lingering issues. We'd like to get those back within a week or so that theoretically they can go before each of the agencies' boards or councils in May for adoption. And that's really all I have on that one. So I will turn it back over to Dino.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Dino, if I might, just for anyone who was interested, there's the CSUMB letter is posted on the admin webpage. Go ahead, Dino.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I see a hand up, Mike Lurch. Mike, did I get that right? Or?
Yeah, his hand, I'm seeing his hands raised. He might be just trying to navigate the Carmel Valley internet.
While we wait for Mike,
yeah. Looks like he dropped off.
Okay.
He's back. Okay, go ahead.
All right, so Mike, chime in when you can and we'll let you speak. So we have a tabled motion from our previous meeting. And if I may, could we one thing that wasn't clear to me about the tabled motion was, did it include the table of water allocations in the TPIA?
No, the request was to remove the table and leave that to the MCWD agreements, and it's already in the existing LRA agreement with the city of Seaside. So it is memorialized in other places. The group felt it did not need to be in this particular document.
Okay, all right.
Just one more administrative item, Dino. If anyone wants to look back at the options A, B, and C, which are referenced in these minutes, you can find them on the FORA admin webpage from the March 11th meeting. So those were the original options presented, and these are amendments to the language or edits to that language.
All right. All right. Well, let's see what the pleasure of the committee is to do here. We have a tabled motion for consideration, and then we have the recommendation from CSUMB.
There's two hands raised. I saw Dino or Melanie and Dino, or not Dino, Lane. Sorry, Melanie and Lane.
Let me. Some reason my screen has changed. Okay, Melanie, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just trying to follow. So I'm looking at the document that was sent out by Harry yesterday that had modifications, I believe, from CSUMB. Is that correct? I'm just trying to make sure I'm looking at all the correct documents that have been forwarded, and I'm not tracking.
Melanie,
yeah, okay.
Let me help you
Hold
with
on
that.
a second. Hold on a second. Let me, Harry, can you stop sharing your screen, please? And then we can, what we can do here is, let me just do that here, and then give me one moment. I'll pull up what we're looking at. So, oy, oy, oy. Here's the packet with the motion. Okay, and then on the admin page, if you want the CSUMB letter, it's right here. It says CSUMB TPIA draft on the current meeting, April 15th. You can pull that up on your own screen. And then the 31120 original language is here. So those are kind of the main reference documents. Go ahead, Kendall.
Thanks, Josh. Melanie, to answer your question, when we met in March, and you may remember everyone was attending that meeting, there was a discussion and there were numerous discussions. And so at that point, the motion was made. The letter from CSUMB is suggesting an alternative to the language that was included in the motion. So basically it's asking for, if that motion were to fail, CSUMBs could potentially be alternative language, or at the discretion of the chair, you could decide to consider it.
All right, thank you, Kendall. I see Lane, and then I see a DY. I'm not sure who that is.
Yeah, Doug Yount.
Oh, Doug.
Yeah.
All right, so Lane and then Doug, please.
So CSUMB and I, we have to talk because we don't agree with some of the language that they are proposing. This is related to the promontory. We think we have other contractual things that that are going to address what water is obligated, and so we can't agree to that language.
Sorry.
So Anya and I are going to talk offline.
Okay, thank you, Lane. Doug.
Yeah, I would strongly suggest that whatever language is finally included in the TPIA related to water, that it includes an exhibit of the allocations, and that the allocations are mentioned as well in the we do support some of that concept that CSUMB put forward, not irrespective of what Lane just talked about, and I wasn't referring to that specifics on the promontory, but specifically relating to the allocations and mentioning the allocations, and for lack of a better term, codifying them in the TPIAs and in the transition plan itself and in the MCWD service agreements. It's very important that those allocations are recognized by all agencies and continue forward in the post-FORA documents, if you will. Thank you.
All right. Steve Mazzarazzo. And then Anya.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, the university would agree with the CSUMB revision under 2.0. And for now, you could delete that footnote as Lane recommends. But 2.0 is revised by CSUMB, is what's been agreed to in the past. It allows some flexibility. And to amplify what Kendall has said, it's memorialized in a LRA ESCA agreement that allowed transfer to Seaside. And at the time, the FORA board debated whether to give those responsibilities to Seaside, and they had two main concerns. And it's in the revised ESCA agreement. One, Seaside was to have no land use authority, and two, Seaside was to respect Table A water allocation. So unless the FORA board wants to change its opinion on that, I think the issue's relatively moot, but it's memorialized in section 2.0 as recommended by CSUMB.
All right, Anya?
I think I'm just echoing what UCSC in our letter said. We really want to have the allocation table represented in the language and recommend what we submitted.
Okay. All right. I see no other hands raised. So,
Hans is raising his hand. Sorry about that, Dino.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. Hans, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Hang on. Yeah, thank you, Dino. I understand I understand the proposed language by CSUMB. However, I think our solution and tabled motion option B covers all those concerns that we have in there. I see some challenges in the proportional reduction increases in that because it puts something into the TPIA that is not part of the bilateral agreements that each jurisdiction has to work with MCWD. So I think it opens up a total other can of worms there. We worked very hard when we put the motion on the table to include the various aspects of the water, and I think that is very well captured. I think the reason why we tabled it at that time was that Lane needed a little bit more thinking and considering that. So I make the motion to move forward with the original motion that we made last time, which is we move to recommend option B with the proposed amendments.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Craig seconds. All right. We're under discussion of a motion on the floor. Lane and then Steve.
So I need to clarify what that motion is. Does it include the footnote from CSUMB on the bottom, where they are trying to take water from our allocation and give it to their allocation?
No, it does not. No,
Okay.
it does not.
But it includes the rest of their proposed changes?
No, this is the original one back from March 11th, Lane, that was tabled.
And it's not going to include the table either?
It includes in there and that's why we work very hard to make a compromise there. The parties acknowledge that MCWD has agreed to the water allocations in Exhibit A. That's the language makes reference to the water allocations. So I just want to clarify, it's very well described on page 2 of the agenda package what the motion was, and it reflects that while we were trying to create that compromise, we wanted to have that the water allocations at least mentioned in Exhibit A.
Okay, I think that table is really important to put in there. I think it's really important. And I think that language that CSU and B put in there is important. And part of that is because it goes back to the board meeting when the board adopted it. And there's some recommendations to put in the board adoption. And they said they didn't need to, but there's discussion and consensus at the board of how the future Army allocations would be allocated, but it was not in the motion. And I think we just need to get that really clear so we all have very strong clarity and understanding. And this motion does not do that. So I can't support it as it is.
Okay, thank you, Lane. Steve, and then Melanie.
Yeah, can we all see a rewriting of that section? It's confusing in the minutes, in my opinion, and I have pretty good reading comprehension, but it would be very nice to have what 2.0 would now state based on what Hans wants.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that something you can pull together, Kendall, on over there?
Yep. I just want to get clarification from Hans, though. So you're suggesting your language with the table included in the document, with the Exhibit A that shows the allocations.
Yes.
Hang on 1 second. So the clarification is each of the parties listed shall meet and confer in good faith and cooperatively develop one or more agreements between the parties and or MCWD regarding the provisions of potable water as agreed to the allocations in Exhibit A, which is the table.
Which means the table is still there in Exhibit A.
Yeah.
Hans? Okay. Kendall, do you have what you need?
I do. I have to type while I'm doing this. So
Well, that's all right. Let's continue under discussion. I think that's.
I'll send you the language right now over, Kendall.
Perfect. That'd be great, Hans. Thank you.
All right. So I see 4 hands up. We'll take them in turn. Melanie, then Doug.
Yeah, I think so. So actually what I just heard Hans read does not, is not. So I think the major issue that I have is that the parties acknowledge that MCWD has agreed to the water allocations in Exhibit A is not sufficient. But what I just heard Hans read was not that sentence. It was agreed upon per the allocations in Exhibit A. So again, I think clarity on what we're actually voting on, but I would echo that if water is included in this, it's important that it memorialize the Exhibit A and the allocations as of today. Nothing precludes future agreements between jurisdictions that may change that. I would like a little, I think I would like a little better understanding with Marina and CSUMB's concerns, maybe. I'm not sure that I'm totally clear on how to weigh in on that portion of the conversation today. Should it be something that continues for our consideration? I'd like a little more just understanding or time to digest that piece of it.
Okay. All right, Melanie. Well, so what we're going to wait for here is Kendall to sort of get. That's all right. To give us the clarity I think we all need in terms of exactly what the words are. In the meantime, let's continue with comment. Doug and then Mike.
Thank you, Dino. I too would echo the request, suggestion for clarity. The language that was suggested in, or that I think Kendall's putting up in Exhibit B or Alternative B is still leaves a lot of uncertainty. And I think when you reference future agreements yet to be approved or agreed to between parties, it muddies the waters, to use a bad metaphor. And I think it's much better to have clarity over the allocations, the responsibility of the allocations, the acknowledgement that those govern today and going forward. Obviously, they can be modified in the future and water traded if needed. But I think the clarity of language here that's repeated then again in the transition plan, that's repeated again in the water service agreements, provides the certainty of those allocations going forward. So I'd suggest that the committee strongly consider either the language provided by CSUMB without the footnote at this point, and or the alternative A, and make sure that the Exhibit A is definitely included in that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Doug. Mike, Steve, and then Kendall, I think, has got the language posted up. Actually, let me do this. Let me go, Kendall. Is that let's start with Kendall and just see if we've got a version that we can all share. Kendall, you ready to share it, or are you still tapping?
I actually have already shared my screen.
Okay, stand by.
I see it shared, so I don't know if you guys are.
It is shared. It is.
Okay. So this is, I just wanted to point out two things. This is option B revised, clarified this morning by Hans Uslar. I want to remind everyone a couple things which we had discussed at the March meeting. The table that we're discussing is the same table that is in the LRA agreement with Seaside, that is in MCWD's water management plan, and is in their agreement. What we did not include was the future allocations. That part we did not get into, remember? So that Exhibit A basically clearly states the allocations that were memorialized in the base reuse plan. They're the same ones that everyone has been agreeing to all this time. There's no difference in those. I just want to make sure everybody understands that there's no change in that. It's basically just, as I've heard several speakers say, it's just memorializing what has already been out there in the past.
Okay, thank you. Let me just ask. Well, let's go to Mike Lurch and then Steve Monserrazzo.
Thank you, Dino. I'm sorry, my connection kind of died when this conversation started. The first motion that we submitted concerning section 2.0, we thought reflected the discussion that was held around the room on 2 occasions so far, where it looked like there was a desire for more certainty in the future on how a groundwater action, likely a reduction, or the availability of Army water would be handled. And that's what we tried to address by adding that sentence after the parentheses on water code. We also felt that the language that where it said each of the parties shall created an obligation for parties to negotiate, when in fact the parties should be free to negotiate or not negotiate. And that's why we changed shall to may. And we also wanted to be sure that if there were such agreements in the future, a party had to be in agreement with what was being done to their allocation, and that it couldn't be a preponderance of the parties go off and do something to a party that doesn't want it done to them. So that's what we were trying to address in providing this language.
Got it. Thank you. Steve.
And this is entirely separate from our second motion concerning the promontory. So.
Okay. Steve Monserrazzo, and then Hans, I saw you raise your hand in the video. Steve, then Hans, please.
Yeah, I'd like to concur with what was just said. This proposed motion, in my opinion, is too garbled, and it would need interpretation as to what cooperatively means when each party can, if it wants to, can only go to MCWD. It does not have to cooperate with all the other parties because it's got the and/or conjunction there. So, John Giffen, what does this mean? Does this mean that each party has to cooperate and, if necessary, give up some of their allocation?
John, do you feel like answering that?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. This is not my language, but I'm happy to look at it and amend it with Kendall and go from there.
Okay, so that sounds like you don't entirely understand it either.
It's not language I have put together, so I don't.
Good.
Okay. Hans.
Yeah, thank you. So let's not construct a reason of creating a big stoppage here right now, which is I have not looked at the language yet. So I'm fine if we change it. Each of the parties listed may meet and confer in good faith. What the kicker is in the CUSUMB proposal is, and that adds a complete new dimension into that, and let's extend FORA for another 2 years if we want to go there, which is the groundwater increases or reductions shall be taken proportionally in accordance with the percentages shown. That's a total new dimension of discussion. And that's probably worthwhile to have that discussion and analyze it further and further. But if we want to do our job and give a recommendation to the administrative committee, I think we should stick with what we have discussed. Yes, Doug, we talked about the pros and cons. It was like deja vu all over what I just heard in the last few statements, not just the ones that were actually from the content new today were from CSUMB and from Steve. But I think if we want to go back to the drawing board, let's all go back to the drawing board. But I think what we have in front of us is the compromise that is based on our negotiations. And if we want to add into that now proportionally, that's a whole new dimension. And I don't think we are prepared to discuss that right now. So I call for the question.
Very good. Hans, understood. You're calling for the question. Your second, I believe, has his hand raised. So Craig, go ahead.
I was simply going to say I agree with Hans. I don't have a problem changing shall to may at all, but adding proportionality is another discussion, and or I think is important language for all the parties involved.
All right. With that said, the question has been called. I would just make a brief comment from the chair, and that is to me, the perfect can get in the way of the good enough. In this case, I think having a clear unambiguous reference to the allocations and having them in Exhibit A was very important from my jurisdiction's perspective. I find the motion supportable and a good compromise. So with that, let's have a roll call vote on the motion as shown before us. Harry?
Craig Malin,
Aye.
Dino Pick,
Aye.
Lane Long,
No.
Hans Uslar,
Aye.
Melanie Beretti.
No.
Motion passes.
All right. Thank you all.
So this language will go in the TPIA is the outcome of this vote.
Correct. All right. So moving to item. Bear with me.
So I saw Lane raised his hand there, Dino. If you're.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Lane.
Thank you. So what Hans said, he didn't want to complicate this motion with dealing with the future water issues. So is this board willing to have a discussion on the future water issues so that we can try to tie that down a little bit? That's my first question. And then Melanie had asked, she just wanted to understand what the issue was on the footnote with us and CSUMB. And the issue is that we've allocated a certain amount of water to the Promontory project, similar to what we do our other projects. They were just wanting us to completely shift our allocation to the university, which we can't do. It's the same similar we have with our other projects, because hopefully we've allocated on a maximum amount that project would need, and if it doesn't use that much water, or there are conservation measures down the road, that comes back to our pot. And so we just need to work with the university and figure out something that is comfortable with them, but we can't give up our future total allocation there.
Thank you, Lane. Doug, I think 3 hands up. Doug, Mike, then Kendall.
Yeah, I just had a question on the motion that was just adopted, or the language that was just adopted. Was that the entire language of section 2.0? Was that added to the bottom of section 2.0? I guess I was a little unclear on how that language just adopted related to the whole section of 2.0, because we didn't have a revised full 2.0 to take a look at. So I was just a question of clarification there on that.
Okay, thanks, Doug. Kendall, do you have that?
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate, that is the entire section. So you may recall we went section by section through the TPIA, and that was the language that has now been passed that will go in as section 2.0. I also just wanted to mention, because there's been some question about it, now that we have that covered, we will be sending out, following the board meeting on Friday, the clean TPIA with all of the changes requested by the members and by the admin committee over the last 6-7 months. And I anticipate that'll be going out probably on Monday based on the board action on Friday. Also wanted to remind everyone, we did release the 2020 transition plan prior to the April 9th meeting. We're going to be releasing an updated version of that for consideration by the board on this Friday, this morning, I believe. It has been completed. I think staff's just taken a last look at it. And that includes comments received from City of Marina, County, and some other folks out there. So it removed all references to successor agency. It cleaned up some of the other language as well. So please look at that today so that you can have a chance to review it with your council and with your representatives so that they're ready for that discussion on Friday.
Okay.
Just to clarify for Kendall, we'll probably be getting that out this afternoon.
All right, Mike.
Okay, I'd like to talk a little bit about our second motion concerning the water allocation for the promontory. I think it is relevant to our discussion today as it pertains to the motion that was just passed and the Exhibit A that will be in the TPIA. You know, the motion that was just passed contemplates agreements between parties for changes in allocations. And Exhibit A already does include some language that memorializes some past changes in allocations in the footnote, where it says they also incorporate the memorandum of understanding between the County of Monterey, the City of Seaside, and FORA, allocating 10 acre-feet to the Central Coast Veterans Cemetery, et cetera, et cetera. So there is a footnote to that table in Exhibit A that memorializes a past agreement. And when I look at the Marina City Council allocating action allocating water to the promontory, it reads that the City Council does hereby irrevocably reserve and allocate 33.29 acre-feet annually of the FORA allocation to the project, its successors and assigned. And the university is the successor and assigned. So it seems fair to us to try and memorialize that agreement just as another agreement is memorialized in Exhibit A.
Okay. Josh.
Two things. First is this item is not agendized, so I don't know if we need to check with the parliamentarian here to find out if we're off track. But the other thing is, it seems like to me this would be best handled between the parties rather than something that is taken up by this committee and the board. But
yeah, Josh, I appreciate that. And I think that's, I think that's the way to handle it. And I believe Lane is planning on moving forward that way, sounded to me. All right. Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
Okay. I don't know. I disagree. I think it's very pertinent. We were talking about agreements between the parties. We were talking about a section of the TPIA that incorporates Exhibit A. We'll continue to pursue it through every avenue available to us.
Understood and appreciate that.
We could have John Gift weigh in here if that would make a difference.
I'm happy to.
Okay.
To the extent he's characterizing it as a second motion, it really is not an agendized item, and is probably best to be handled amongst the parties at this stage rather than at this meeting.
Very good. Thank you, John. All right. Any other comments on the motion just passed before we move to the next item? Lane.
So I just want to get clarity. So Kendall is going to get to us this afternoon, or Josh, you will.
Yeah, we're sending out the meeting packet for the special meeting on Friday. We're in process of putting that together, and it'll go out. The transition plan will be in that packet.
Okay, and that'll have the complete language that was approved today for the water.
There's two different things, and they're easy to get confused. One is the transition plan implementing agreements, and those are the agreements that are intended to replace the 2011 or 2001 implementation agreements. Then there is a thing that's going to go in the packet for the board to consider on Friday, which is the 2020 transition plan. And that's basically amendments, refinements to the transition plan that was approved in 2018, addressing things like dates that were put in there to trigger actions related to the habitat activities. So is there anything you would add to that, Kendall, to clarify further?
No, I just think, and I'm getting a couple of questions in, and I hope you all understand. I'm happy, maybe Harry, when I send over to him the motion that was made today, we're happy to email that out to everyone, but I just want to reiterate, we've got a lot of moving parts. We are not going to release the TPIA with the clean version until Monday, when we've had the last bit of the board weigh in. There's so many versions, it just gets to be a little wacky. So please have some patience with us. We will be sending those out next week along with the 2020.
All right. Okay, folks, let's move on to 6B, please. Unassigned fund allocation.
Yeah. So I'll be doing that. I'm going to try to share my screen here and help us stay somewhat focused on that. Okay. Let's see. Are you folks seeing the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay. So background, last Thursday, the board approved the mid-year budget, and that's general and CIP budgets. And if my calculations are correct here, the total unassigned funds are $1,963,000, which are not accounting for unfinished administrative and or legal funds. Current post-FORA funding requests amount to over 3 million, and this is a summary of those. Sorry, there is a mistake. I'm realizing as I'm reading, made a last-minute adjustment by including this LAFCO 100,000, and my math is wasn't carried through properly. So the number is 1,863, not 1,963 of unassigned funds. So just because I know Helen's watching, she's probably not happy with that. But let's see if I can make that adjustment so people are clear on what's going on here. Okay. Okay. So that's what we have. This was the unassigned funds as reported in to the board and approved. This is what's been requested. This is our list of requests. The item that probably needs some clarification is, we received a letter from Seaside that included this number plus funds that were allocated for the Eucalyptus Road repair. And so since those were part of the CIP budget, we've taken them out of the full request that we got from Seaside. So Craig, if you're looking at that. Similarly, from the County of Monterey, we got a request that was around 1.5 million. In this table, we've called out the Veterans Affairs Office because there has been this unique focus on the question of continuing veteran support that emanated from the VIAC, and so that maintaining the Veterans Affairs Office support was included in the county's request. We've just broken them out for clarity here. And similarly, this LRA administrative support item, which is also included in the letter provided from Seaside, is called out separately. So I guess the main point here is to just illustrate that we're currently oversubscribed in asks. We have some as yet finished ongoing legal matters that could further diminish this number. And so at some point, it might get down to, you might get what you can, or you might get what you need, but not what you want, something like that. So really, the board will be taking this up at some point in May, probably later in May, if not early June, when the actual numbers are best known. And so this is mostly for information purposes. You could make some recommendations if the committee chose to at this point that we could bring to the board when the item comes forward, but we just wanted to illustrate that this is kind of what we're looking at currently. So with that, I would take any questions you might have.
All right. Any questions? I see Craig's hand up. Craig, go ahead.
Thank you. I'll just make two suggestions, and I'm fine with either one or any other suggestion. One would be that the admin committee members who aren't making requests should decide this. The other idea, if that doesn't play, is I would just move. Well, I won't move because I want to have a discussion, but I could see making sure that the veterans get what they need, LAFCO gets what it needs, and the city of Seaside gets what it needs for admin support for the LRA, because that is for everyone, not Seaside. And then, somehow split the difference on the others. But I would say the veterans, LAFCO, and the LRA support should be funded.
Okay, very good, Craig. Thank you. So are we looking for a recommendation from admin to the board on allocation, Josh, or was this?
Yeah, I mean, that would be helpful. I think, the board always can benefit from having the input of you all on these type of matters. So obviously in the last meeting, though, they took the two recommendations that we all worked so hard on and went their own way. So it's hard to predict what they're going to do, but I think having your input would be helpful.
Okay. Lane, your hand is up. Go ahead, Lane.
So what Craig just talked about, I wouldn't have a problem with. I think we could put in a lot of additional costs that we have. I think with the existing stockade, I think you have some existing contracts that not sure you have sufficient money. We certainly have a lot of other road maintenance projects, so we aren't throwing those in there. But I would totally agree with LRA support for Seaside, Veterans Office administrative support, things like that. LAFCO, I think that's good. But if we're putting other projects in, I think it'll be a grab bag. I'll dump in a lot of other things that not sure I want to go down that road, but focusing on those key ones, I think I could support.
Okay. Any other thoughts or even a motion? Melanie?
Hold on, Melanie, we're not hearing you.
Yeah, Melanie, you don't appear to be muted, but you're not coming through.
Sign language.
All right, well.
Oh, hold on. Let's see. Unmute. You're back on mute.
Did that magically chime me in?
Yep. There you go.
Okay, got it. I'm figuring Zoom out. So my apologies, my audio, I dropped off, and so I missed a portion of what Craig said. So not to be redundant, I think in concept, the LAFCO, the Seaside Administration, the Veterans Affairs, those in concept I'm fine with. I think I wanted to, and I apologize if it's redundant, understand the roadway maintenance and repairs request from the City of Seaside. And I did want to have a chance to talk a little bit about I think that it's important, the county's request, some of those are direct items that such as records retention, for example, they're direct items that we've agreed to accept administratively from FORA. And so I think in any considerations, anything that is a direct administrative responsibility coming to a jurisdiction with FORA's departure should be given higher priority. There are certainly other elements on the county's request that are responsibilities that we're assuming, and in some ways because what we wanted was a discussion of the possibility not just of the remaining unassigned funds, but because there is a bond issuance on the table, which will sequester effectively all of the general fund funding that we would have gotten. It was wanting to have a dialogue around the mechanism by which, if not directly from total unassigned funds, if there is a way and what that mechanism would look like to have some of this other kind of funding needs for the administrative piece be viewed or entered into as a potential obligation of FORA, a debt obligation of FORA before its dissolution. So I just want to be clear that the conversation wasn't intended to be solely around the total unassigned, but to try to have a bit of a creative discussion around what can reasonably and should reasonably be considered debt that could be funded out of the tax component so that all of that revenue is not lost on its way through to the county.
All right. Anyone else? Thank you, Melanie.
Yeah.
Anyone else with a comment here? I see no hands up.
Well, if I might, Dino, I know this question of what Melanie referred to has kind of been lingering out there about FORA's ability to incur debts through kind of board action prior to sunset. And I wonder, not to put you too much on the spot, John, but I know we've discussed this. Do you have any input on legal interpretation of our ability to do that at this point that you could add?
We're working on it.
He's working on it. You're muted, John.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
We are working on it now. we do have, in the special board meeting, we have different mechanisms that, at least with regard to the habitat funds, we are seeking guidance from the board as to how to mechanically allocate these funds. So
yeah, but that's particular to funds that we already have and we're looking to distribute, you know, were collected under the CFD. What we're talking about is where the board could basically incur debts for payment of services to the county, and those could be, you know,
paid later,
paid through tax increment later. And I think we need to really get clear on if that is even a feasible option. I know there's been some dreaming around that, and if it's possible, it'd be great to be able to do. If it's not possible, we should know sooner than later so that we can not waste too much time.
Understand. I'm happy to look at that. I know we've received a couple of invoices out of the blue from entities, and I think that's where they're driving.
Right,
so,
that's right.
So we will look at that and have something for you shortly.
Okay, so maybe we can bring that question back. Like I said, the board is not intending to take up the question of kind of post-FORA funding or allocation of funds until late May. We have a fair number of weighty matters now, the bond chief among them, that we really need to get done, along with the conveyance of the CIP project. So those are kind of our big focus areas. I don't know if it would be helpful to display at this time. You know, I do have both the letter from Seaside and the summary of the funding request from the county. Would that be useful to have for discussion here, or does that seem like we'd be complicating?
My suggestion, Josh, is let's not introduce significant documents we haven't seen yet for digestion on the spot. Rather, re-agendize this for a meeting and then push that material out ahead of time.
Okay.
We don't stretch this out very unnecessarily,
Yeah,
especially
that's good.
Considering there's not a decision pending.
Okay, great.
All right. Any other comments on this? It sounds like we're not ripe for a motion or action on this at the moment, but it was a good, at least it was a good start to a discussion or continuation of a discussion.
Right.
Josh, are you good with that?
Yeah, I'm good with that. We'll kind of watch the trends and bring this back probably in May, late May or early June, before the board needs to take some action on it.
Yeah, and I appreciate everything that that was said. It sounds like we've got support around 3 of the items, right? The Veteran Cemetery APCO request and the Seaside administrative request in general terms.
Right.
And it's really understanding the county's position a little bit better, and perhaps going from there.
Yeah, that's helpful for us too. That'll help us bring back more relevant content for you all to consider.
All right. So that concludes item 6B. Item 7, items from members. Seeing no hands. Our next meeting, is that correct down there, May 6th?
Let me just confirm. I believe it is. That's today. Yeah, just a note that I mentioned earlier, so you might make your board members, help your board members be aware. We are, based on the need to process the bond documents, we're scheduling a special board meeting on Thursday. Sorry, let's see. Yeah, Thursday, April 30th. That's when we would plan to bring the full package of bond documents for board action. This would allow the bond issuance to happen and the funds to come in and kind of be ripe before, probably 2 weeks before we turn out the lights over there. So
Nice. Okay. Lane, I see your hand up.
Thank you. So I did have a couple questions. So on that bond documents that will come back, so that will include the additional, the change back to the 50%, but also the other parcels that were left off.
yes,
That
they'll
will
be
include those.
included. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, that is great. Then I had another question here. Can't remember. Oh, I just wanted to thank the county. I think they are doing a great job with this whole COVID-19. I really enjoyed their presentation yesterday and all their different modeling. You can see if you watch that, Joby Aviation made a presentation and you could actually see their latest live vertical lift and takeoff vehicle, and you could kind of see some of their plans, and they're going to move forward with their tent because of hopefully helping that to be an alternative care site. But I wanted to give thanks to the county. They're doing a great job with that.
Terrific. Thank you, Lane. Completely agree. Great work by the county going on there. Okay, guys, we'll see you on May 6th, if not before. Everybody be safe, and thanks very much. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Hey, Josh.
Yes.
Josh, before you pop off, I just had a clarification question. So your
Sure.
timing for when you need, we're working on the parcels because the parcel list doesn't align. I just want to be clear for your timing for when you need to get that from the county to add to the indenture document.
Well, Paul Tim is working on that now, so it needs to be, and he should be in touch with your council.
He is, yeah.
I mean, simply the parcel, the inclusion of the parcels doesn't really, the funds are going to come in and they're going to be allocated on a percentage basis, right?
Yeah, but the parcels, if the indenture doesn't include the parcels, then it suggests that we'd be prohibited to actually be able to extend on those parcels. So I just want to make sure I'm clear on timing. I know that we're working with Paul, but given your
we want to be able to
30th.
bring, we want to have this, so it needs to get to him like, as soon as possible.
Everything's always as soon as possible. So there's other comments, and our team's reviewing, so there's other edits and comments that they may have. So I guess that's where I just, as soon as possible on everything doesn't help. I'm trying to help focus our staff time on various things. So when's your publication date and final date for these? I mean,
well, look, Paul is working on the documents. He is planning to have us a final thing by the end of next week, which we can then send out in a packet for the board. So
that's what I needed is just, like I said, I think we're close on it. There's just so many moving parts that I'm trying to make sure I'm keeping the collective focused on the right timeline. That's all. Okay, on that's perfect, because I now have an internal meeting over for bond documents to join.
Oh, okay, good. Well,
thank you.
Yeah, get us that info as soon as you can. That'd be great. Okay.
I would ask before, so I appreciate that you pulled out the veterans affairs, but I was going to say, if you're going to share information again, it might be helpful to have the summary that pulls out, like a number of our requests are related to retention, records retention. There's only a couple of, and assignment of an agreement that you guys already have that's active. So I think you can send out the letter, but if you're gonna sub out part of the county's requests, I would ask that you kind of lump and sub out the different elements of our requests, not just exclusively the veterans.
That one's just been that one's just been a persistent theme. So that's the only reason Today was
No,
the,
and I got it. No, and I got it. Why just that was a part of it. And so just as you're preparing for that next one, would be great.
yeah, we'll include the full letter and everything. Yeah. In
Perfect.
fact,
No,
the full
that's great.
letter's
Thank you,
the full
Josh.
letter's already been shared, by the way. So.
Well, and that's where I know it was shared, and that's why, you know, I think, and I was trying to flag, like, you know, a chunk of that is specifically for records retention, which we've agreed to assume. So I'm trying to parse out as well what is direct administration that we're wanting or saying we'll assume versus other things that we'd like to have some consideration to offset the hit that